Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipsters Curtain Calls. This is episode 26, entitled Blue Sky Action? How to Navigate the Complexities of Crypto Auditing, Accounting, and Financial Reporting. The Crypto Hipsters Curtain Calls are compilations of episodes from seasons 6 through 8. In this particular episode, has two interviews, clips from interviews from season 6 and two clips from season 8. This focus is mainly on accounting and financial reporting for crypto taxes, crypto-related financial information, and it's very informative, and each episode is available in its entirety on Spotify, Apple, Google, anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. The four conversations I had on this episode: first, from season 6, I interviewed the co-founder of Thesis Defense. Her name is Hind, Kurhan. We talked about, and that was on November 25, 2023, and we spoke about creating consistency, consensus, and auditing standards across the world of blockchain technology. My second conversation with Zhou, who is the founder of Aquifer. We spoke in season 8 in January 2025. We talked about how to best navigate the complexities of crypto accounting. My third conversation, also from season 8, from March 2025, was with Patrick Camuso, who is the CPA and founder of Camuso CPA. We spoke about building a CPA firm that not only understands digital assets, but also serves as a trustworthy strategic partner for Web3 businesses. It was a delightful conversation. Patrick is a fellow podcaster as well. He's a CPA, he's an accounting firm, and he does podcasts. And if you're interested in more depth of the tax conversations, financial reporting conversations, please check out his podcast. And then last but not least was my first conversation with this man from February 2024. I spoke to him most recently in season 9, which we'll cover at a later date. I spoke with Jeff Owens, who is the co-founder of Haven One. We talked about designing a trusted environments to drive mass adoption of on-chain finance, aka DeFi. So sit back, relax, enjoy these conversations, enjoy these clips for episode 26 of the Crypto Hipsters Curtain Calls, entitled Blue Sky Action? How to Navigate the Complexities of Crypto Accounting, Auditing, and Financial Reporting. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy.
Okay, you have a standard, you have system of accountability. So what? Well, right now we are constantly going through these market transitions, bear, bull, volatility. And, one of the main reasons we're going through these swings is because of the lack of consistent investment pouring into crypto and Web3, right? So it's basic. People pull out their money, market crashes, people put in their money, the market pumps. That tells us that we need to appeal to institutional investors who can create some semi-permanent market stability. So this reduces the volatility, and that volatility is paralyzing. So ultimately, when we reduce the volatility, that means we can successfully build in the space. We also know that we've seen continuous hacks leading to billions of dollars in losses annually, right? Just repeatedly. So I think security plays a larger role than anyone cares to admit. How can we appeal to institutional investors if they don't think their assets are going to be safe? As an individual, I feel exactly the same. I'm much less inclined to invest in a project if I'm unsure of the security posture. Has it been audited? Who audited it? Who ensured that they audited it comprehensively? According to what standard? What does an audit look like? What should the methodology entail? Is this the right methodology? According to whom, right? So the problem right now is that we rely on the individual projects that we're investing in to do the security due diligence. And that's the only system that's in place. Instead, we need to be making a change as an industry, right? We need to develop a standard, we need to adhere to it, and we need to hold accountable those who don't. And if we do that, and if we do that repeatedly, and if we do that successfully, then when institutional investors look at, the incredible technology we're building, and it's missing the aspect of hacks, they're going to be a lot more comfortable putting their money in our industry. And the result of that is going to be more market stability.
That all makes sense. I want to go back to what you said. You said the measure should not be profit. The first point was the measure should not be profitability. In addition to needing sustainability, if it's not profitability, what does your standard look like in order to capture those institutional investors?
Well, look, as a business, of course, profitability is key, right? You can't really function, unless you're a nonprofit, and there ain't no nonprofit auditing businesses around here. So my point here is that I want to try and draw a parallel here. It's like if I was selling tires and I was profitable, that would tell me that my tires are the desirable tires. Everybody comes back, they continue to buy my tires because my tires are good. That means my tires are good, and that means my business is sustainable and profitable. If I'm selling audits and I'm profitable, that's not an indicator that my audits are good, because there's a huge supply and demand problem, and there is no method or measuring stick to indicate whether my audits are good or not. We just have created a norm. There are people who really care about security and really want their code audited and want users to have safe code to utilize and interact with. And there are folks who want audits because they just want a sticker that says I've been audited so that they can get their business off the ground. But we have no way to easily differentiate between those types of audit customers. So, if we continue to get millions and millions of audit requests, that doesn't mean our audits are good. Lots of, not so great auditing companies get lots of audit requests. So the point I'm trying to make here, the nuance is that just being profitable doesn't mean we're doing well in our business. It doesn't mean we're doing right by security. So nobody has been incentivized because they've been profitable. And I think, it's easier in a bear market to be like, okay, things have slowed down. What are our values here? We want to be a profitable business, but do we care about decentralized technology? If the answer is a resounding yes, then we need to think about how to make this a more sustainable, industry, and security plays a huge part. And just, taking advantage of the market of people who want audits isn't going to help. We need to create a standard. There needs to be a methodology. It needs to be repeatable. And I hate to say it, but it needs to look like sort of the traditional finance world. When you go get, you have to get an audit. If you don't get an audit, then you get your hand slapped and you get a fee, and there's a regulator. And I hate to use the word regulator anywhere near our industry, because, I do share the values that we all share in this industry, but, there are things to learn from traditional finance systems and the way audits happen in that world. And I think we would benefit from taking a beat and looking at that and seeing what we can utilize that would benefit us.
From an accounting needs perspective, what's the overlap there between TradFi and crypto?
Yeah, so you're working with capital market assets that have a change in valuation every second. Actually, every millisecond, but from reporting basis, if you can just get the value in which you move the asset, the daily close value, and the month end close, you're pretty good. So there's a lot of overlap in that. And what plagues the crypto industry is that because you have assets that change in value at all time, they're highly liquid, you're basically on the hook for one of the most complicated forms of accounting. Because if you sold something that didn't change in value, like a pencil or sweater, things are much easier. But because you have assets that do change, every transaction has a lot of components. For example, you have the fee that you probably charge clients to transfer that. Maybe that's a revenue, and then you have your own fee, that's the cost. But it doesn't end there. you have capital gains, right? So for capital gains to be reported accurately, and IRS will come and challenge you because it could be a lot of money that they're after. You need to have all those records calculated correctly in terms of like when you got the asset initially, what was the cost, right? And then to when you offloaded asset. It could be 1 hour, 1 minute, 1 day, 1 year, but you have to have records of that for as long as you've had that asset. And a lot of founders, don't have it, but like I said earlier, we're blessed with the blockchain technology. If I go on the blockchain ledger, I can find the value when that asset was first transferred into the client's wallet. So there is hope there. So, a lot of things that, founders tend to do is they say, well, here's the wallet, you go sync the blockchain ledger, and then you'll be able to calculate that for sure. But then there's also other implications that they never look at, which is like inventory, which is, how much did you buy it for, right? I know you're transferred in like that, but what about inventory, right? Because, you stockpiled on Bitcoin, in a pile when the price was low, and now you're selling it. You kind of need to use some of that gap standard that you just mentioned, Jamil, like first in, first out, or weighted average cost inventory accounting. You have to do that. It's, I've had founders that say, hey, look, I sold it for 10 and I got this Bitcoin 2 minutes ago. It doesn't work like that. You don't get to pick and choose what your cost is.
So that opens up a couple other questions. So I'll give you an example. Say you bought something 5 years ago and it had a certain price. When you transferred it to another wallet, when you make a transfer, it's not a taxable event. We can make a transfer of like property to like property for your own wallet. It's a different, and say a sale happened in that other wallet or exchange, and then you brought it back to your wallet. And you do this on a rotational basis with a lot of your assets. How do you revalue or constantly revalue your cost basis? Or do you have to keep a record of your original cost basis, even though your transfers are not taxable events?
Yeah, you have to. So first of all, if it's all personal or all corporate within the same corporation, the transfer between wallets, it's a non-taxable event. You are correct there. You still need to get the original cost that you got it for, right? And so like, what's the best way? I tell people that, if you're starting out in crypto and then you're not going to get an accountant for a while, using crypto brokerage accounts to do all your trades is a wonderful idea because they keep all that record in your logged in account. One day you can extract it as PDF or CSV and give it to your accountant, and it is all there. And if you get audited, you can pull that up. Now, what we've seen is founders would actually transfer assets from their company owned wallets to their personal wallets. And they thought it was a non-taxable event. It absolutely is a taxable event. They just didn't know about it. You're taking a withdrawal from the company. It's almost like, if I go to my company and I take, $5,000, well, what was that? Was that management fee? Was it, paying myself dividends because I'm the owner? There's a lot of that implication. And then when it hits personal, it depends on your residency, right? A lot of people, they say, I'm no longer a resident of, this country and that country. Well, are you self-declaring it? You're not allowed to self-declare. You have to work with an immigration lawyer to get all that solidified before you do something like a corporation to personal transfer, or else you will be taxed on how the IRS interprets your case.
Yeah, I would say like with the financial advisors, they really sort of started focusing on this probably maybe about a year or so ago. And, like that was like early on and they're starting to sort of trickle in more. So I think, there's been a lot of legitimacy added to the space over maybe the past like 2 years or so. And I think that has allowed them to or maybe it's even pushed them to some degree. So, having to have these conversations with their clients to a higher degree. So I think right now a lot of financial advisors are trying to get like a deeper understanding of it, figure out how, they're gonna maybe like fit this into a portfolio or speak to clients with it. There are a few financial advisors that are, much more well along than that and actually are like very crypto literate. But I would say as a whole, it's kind of like in the early days for them. And they're like learning, and very few of them are working with crypto. But I think the trend is gonna move towards, it having to get integrated into their financial plans in the future.
And so I would think then they're only recommending Bitcoin, maybe Ethereum right now.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah.
Okay.
Unless they have clients, if there's some advisors I know that have clients that are deep into crypto. So, if you get someone deep into crypto, they're gonna have more than that. So, you gotta address that then if you're working with those types of people.
True. So the financial frontier. Some people will tell you that the financial frontier is DeFi and DeFi only. So how do we? And I would think it's DeFi too. I mean, but how do you get the TradFi folks to embrace and understand, and embrace, that the future of crypto, the financial frontier is decentralized.
The ethos of decentralization and a lot of what Bitcoin was started around as well, like all of those ideas. I don't necessarily know if they fully translate over into TradFi. I believe in them, but I think that's like a conundrum for the industry as a whole. Like I've been in crypto for a while myself, and you've seen these different adoption phases, and like with each adoption phase, like kind of the people that come in are different than the last group of people, basically. It's like a different culture to a degree is another way to say it, I guess. So like, you had these ideological early Bitcoin adopters that were very like freedom oriented. Does the whole entire space include that ethos anymore? Probably not. So as we start to see like TradFi and Web2 come in, are they going to just share all of our ethos with that, and or with the decentralization movements that we've seen? I don't know. That the fact that we're working with permissionless blockchains hopefully means that as long as we get some regulatory protection, we can still have decentralization, and maybe some people won't value it and we'll go to other places where they won't have it. I mean, look at like even like with the Bitcoin ETFs, like a true Bitcoiner is going to want to hold their own Bitcoin, basically. But a lot of these, to get wider adoption, to get people into it that aren't going to do that, we start to see these things. So I don't know. I don't really know how it's going to play out. But I'm hoping that the options remain. We just saw some news where it's looking like the broker definition isn't going to be applied to DeFi in terms of the 1099 requirements for the IRS, which is big. So like not having that requirement and knowing that this is still going to like function the way it is in the States, to me that's important, because we can still have decentralization there. And if people want to go and hold their keys on Coinbase, it's kind of their option. And I think it's going to be like a mixed bag, kind of.
So part of my next question was, why is there a need now more than ever to have security features in the DeFi space? But you said, about hacks and scams and rug pulls. How do you prevent them at the highest level? How do you stop a rug pull, or how do you stop a hack before it begins?
So this is the accountability part that is super important. So accountability as it stands today, usually comes in the form of audits. But who actually maintains or mandates that the audits are updated consistently? Like I have an engineering background. Typically, the way engineering works is you make a small tweak. You release something, you do a small tweak on it, you release it again, and you think, oh, well, there's no way that this actually has a bug in it. I only touched it over here in this small little area. But that's not really how smart contracts nor code work. You typically, when you move something, something breaks in another area. And this is how the exploits happen. So oftentimes, as I mentioned, audits happen at the moment of deployment, and then a company will showcase that their smart contracts have been audited, yet nobody holds them accountable to get those contracts re-audited every single time they deploy that smart contract. And so as a result, you can deploy smart contracts very easily in the DeFi and decentralized ecosystems. And then this is how these exploits happen. And you have the smart contract hacks, which are, a huge part to most of the hacks that occur and the rug pulls that occur. So I think really bringing that accountability on the smart contract audit side is number one. Number two is the identity verification aspect. So rug pulls are oftentimes companies coming in, deploying something, drawing up a bunch of hype, and then running away with the token. If your identity is associated to that project, you're going to be much more accountable to the success of that project. And not everything's going to be successful, but we really want to avoid these like really quick pump and dump schemes that are occurring within crypto. And a lot of that actually, unfortunately, needs to come into the identity verification, which I know is a sensitive topic to a lot of people, including myself, that are really the quote unquote degens of the ecosystem that want to live in the Wild West.
I used to want to live in the Wild West. Now I want to live in the Wild East.
Exactly.
You said the magic word, though. You said identity, right? So I know, what's the role of digital identity in DeFi, and then especially in the light of the CFTC focusing heavily on it.
Yeah, so I think it all comes down to the accountability aspect of it, which is that when people have been doxxed, they're going to be much less likely to do something bad. And so this is like an example of this is we talked about earlier, which is you're not going to walk into a bank and put your passport up in front of the camera, right? Like that's essentially what identity verification is doing on chain. Now, the question is how do you actually execute on something like this? Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to write personal data to the blockchain because it will live there forever. And so that is the antithesis of what decentralization is. And so there's a couple different unique ways you can solve this. And I think we'll see an evolution of this over time. But the first is what we're doing even at Haven, which is creating a soul-bound NFT that's associated to the user's wallet address. The actual identity verification is collected off-chain. And so we work with compliance partners that are regulated, that have their VASP license, that have their own AML, KYC policies and procedures. They have an entire compliance team. They do the collection of the KYC. And then what they do is they mint the soulbound NFT that's on Haven 1 that contains anonymized pieces of data about the user. So it contains country of residence, it contains level of verification completed, contains things like, are they politically exposed, yes or no? These are binary bits that developers can then use to basically ring fence their applications based on what their own local jurisdiction requires, without needing to know the exact identity of the person that they're interacting with. And then in the event that something does happen, you do have this off-chain compliance partner where the data is stored, in which you can go to that from a regulator standpoint. So I guess the key thing here is that identity verification is absolutely needed in order to bring on the next phase of traditional companies coming in, because they need to know the counterparties that they're interacting with. But the question is how do you actually do this in a way that doesn't reveal every single piece about who you are to everybody on chain, because that's what blockchain does. So that's the first way. And the second way is actually working with zero knowledge proofs and trying to build something in which you can actually completely obfuscate this away. And so we're working with a couple of partners on this now to start moving down that way. But I think as we've solved it today, doing the anonymized soulbound NFT works just as well.